Hello and welcome to Wrap, a live show in the DKNY storefront window at 420 West Broadway. My name is Emily Baltz and I'm your host for 8 weeks from September 8th to October 27th as I interview female artists working and living in New York City about their recipes for art and process. That is what Wrap stands for, Women, Recipes, Art, and Process. And today I have an incredible woman sitting next to me, Danielle Meder. Danielle Meder is a fashion artist and writer. As an illustrator, she specializes in sketching live at fashion shows, creating complex layered paper dolls, I didn't know this, and helping fashion designers communicate their ideas. The theme of her writing is the ephemeral nature of fashion, beauty, and fame. She is a regular contributor to the style section of Canada's national newspaper, The Globe and Mail, and her first book, Draw Fashion Now, is published by Quarto. Danielle, welcome.
Hi, Emily. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being here. So we first met in this unlikely of place as we were sketching the
Oscar de la Renta show.
Oscar de la Renta show.
It was fall-winter 2013.
Fall-winter 2013. And you were just beginning your career.
No,
Kind of?
at that point. So that was 3 years ago. I was going over the tricky bit. That was year 7. So
That's amazing.
or year 6. Anyway, yeah. In any case, it was one of the greatest seasons of my life. It was a reassurance that I was actually getting somewhere and doing something correctly to be at the Oscar de la Renta show, the notorious one where Galliano was interning, actually.
Yeah, this was quite a spectacle.
Yeah, it was. I remember it was quite a spectacle. It was the last day of that week. I had been to a lot of really high-profile shows like Alexander Wang, stuff that I never normally get access to. And my work was being seen in Women's Wear Daily, which is not only the fashion paper of record, but historically the fashion paper that featured a lot of great fashion illustrators, including my hero, Kenneth Paul Block. So it was the first time I felt like I was participating in the history of my craft.
This is incredible. And how did you begin on this path? Did you always know that you wanted to be a fashion illustrator?
I wasn't always aware that that was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
As a young child, I grew up in the bush in rural Ontario. My parents are back to the land, sort of, they're too young to be hippies, but we'll say hippie-type people. Yeah. And my dad builds log homes, so he built a log home that we lived in. My mom is a music teacher, a piano teacher, and we were homeschooled as kids. I had a lot of time on my hands, and we would go to the library every week. My favorite books at the library were survey texts about the history of costume. And I was fascinated in particular with the fashion plate format. I'm really interested in just these head-to-toe images of women wearing clothing, how the clothing changed over time from century to century, from decade to decade. So that kind of progression, that series of head-to-toe, usually drawn images, was what really seemed to trigger my imagination. Considering I grew up in a place where there was no fashion, there was no clothing stores, we wore the same clothes every day, it just seemed incredibly exotic to me. And so I started drawing little paper dolls as a small child. I had like a huge set of paper doll collections that I drew as a small child. And I did that just for fun, because I didn't go to school, so that's what I did all the time. And I was really lucky that I had parents who were encouraging of me, and I never got a real job. I just kept doing the thing that I did when I was a little girl until, well, I'm still doing it. I'll keep doing it for as long as I can get away with it.
Something that I find so fascinating is that more and more as I talk to people throughout this process is that there's a certain child's mind that has always stayed present. Like you're still making the paper dolls, you're still looking at the world in the same way. Mm-hmm. How much do you think that is that a prerequisite for following your own path or making art?
Yeah, I think I was really lucky that I had so much time on my hands as a child that I had the opportunity to be bored. I think when you're bored, you're drawn to the thing that you really want to do. And I was also really lucky. I think a lot of people, when they're young and they do drawings, and kids do drawings and they're not really, really great, a lot of people get discouraged. Somebody tells them, they're like, oh, that doesn't look like a person wearing a dress or whatever. But I never got that discouragement. I just got encouragement. My parents were like, this is what you like doing, just keep doing it. Like, we don't understand because we don't care about fashion. This is why we moved to the bush, because we don't care about this stuff. But if this is what you care about, then you can just go ahead and keep doing it. I think my dad really instilled in me the idea of thrift, which allowed me to be an artist and to be poor for years and years and years. And my mom really instilled in me the value of practice, which is that it's more important to do something over and over again for your own pleasure, regardless of whether you get any applause for it or not.
Yeah.
And of course, if you do the practice, then you can do the performance. So
you've been practicing since then and performing now.
As I've gotten later into this later stage of my career, I mean, I guess this is still the beginning because it's only year 9.5.
That sounds like 20,000 hours.
It's been a lot. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I've been called upon more and more to perform, and I put myself in situations like the ones where I am with you right now, because I've come to this realization that it's not about doing drawings and delivering them to my clients. I'm actually in showbiz. Fashion is showbiz. So it's important to be able to show up and sparkle.
Yeah, I find it interesting because we've talked before about your work, and you're as equally talented and passionate about the form of writing.
Yes.
Yeah, tell me about your writing and what goes on there and what drew you to that form as well.
Yeah, if you told me as a little girl, I had no idea as a little girl that I could be a fashion illustrator, but I knew that you could be a writer. So if you'd asked me what I wanted to be when I was a little girl, I would have told you I would have wanted to be a writer. And I sort of pictured myself being a novelist, like Margaret Atwood or something.
Yes.
Yeah, CanCon references there. So yeah, that's what I wanted to be as a little girl. I think I am, and I notice this very much in the fashion industry where I'm surrounded by people who think in pictures all the time. I very much think in words. And I shape my concepts in words. And I think it's very telling that my social network of choice is Twitter. Like, for me to be able to briefly hold something in a few words, it just gives me a type of mental satisfaction that nothing else can. Yeah. So I'm also feel very blessed that as I've progressed in my career, I've been called upon more and more to be a writer. And the writing that I do for the Globe and Mail has been, like a really fascinating departure. I feel like I'm getting deeper into the thing that really fascinates me, which, to go back to the survey text again, is the progression of fashion, the way that it is always changing, how it's always ending and beginning.
And I mean, you note this even in your biography, the ephemeral nature of fashion and fame. Where do you see, through your eye, I think, because it also sounds like a critical eye too, a historical eye that you're looking at your own craft through, how do you see it ebbing and flowing over in this 20,000-ness that or the 2000-ness that we're in?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really kind of peculiar and appropriate. First of all, it's appropriate that the handle I've chosen for myself online is Final Fashion, which wraps up all the ideas of what interests me just very neatly. I just came up with that one day when I was, in college and I was stoned and I was like, Final Fashion, that's going to be my thing. I was like, I had no idea what it means, but it has ended up meaning so much. And then I guess sorry, what was the other part?
How does ebbed and flow? But tell me a little.
Oh, yeah. How have I chosen this incredibly anachronistic career of being a fashion illustrator? There literally couldn't be a worse time in history to choose this job, and that's what I've done.
Oh, tell me why.
Because nobody cares about fashion illustration. Every season, there is an article. There was an article in the New York Times last week where there's like, fashion illustration is coming back in a big way. They illustrated the article with an illustration by René Gural, a dead man. And the content of the article was like, oh, we have these 2 retrospective exhibitions of fashion illustration coming up. Therefore, fashion illustration is coming back. The only time they mentioned contemporary fashion illustrators in the article was to comment on illustrators that had perceived social media influence. There literally is no there is no eye or regard in current media or in, like for what I do. There's no recognition of what the difference between a quality fashion illustration is, a non-quality fashion illustration.
Interesting.
I struggled so much this fashion week to get access, to be recognized, pitch so many people. It was very frustrating. You can hear it in my voice.
Yeah.
And then the only person who recognized the value in what I was doing the whole week was a woman who I think was in her 80s.
Incredible.
And she saw me right away, and she was like, "What are you doing?" She's like, "You're really good. Do you know who Kenneth Paul Block is?" And I'm like, "Of course I know who Kenneth Paul Block is. I mean, like, I'm the 21st century Kenneth Paul Block."
Whoa. So tell me more just about, I think in terms of choosing a path of illustration, because it's representational, and there's also so many other mediums. So we have photography, fashion photography, we have video, moving image, right? Mm-hmm. What is, when we think about representing fashion, for example, what does illustration bring to it that another medium does not?
Well, in a practical sense, side views. I'm obsessed with side views, and fashion photography is notoriously terrible at catching a body moving from the side. This is my favorite thing to grab. So that is something on a practical level. Illustration can also conceive of concepts that do not exist yet, which photography is less good at doing. Although I think it's still possible. There is a lot of crossover now between photography and illustration, so I think the distinctions are less important. What I've noticed, because I feel a real alignment with photographers, and I have a lot of friends who are photographers, I feel that essentially we are doing the same thing. We are seeking energy. We're seeking to find attitude and energy and somehow capture it using whatever the tool happens to be. A photographer, has his camera. For me, I am the camera. For me, like, the stimulus comes through my eye, it goes through my body, my nerves, it comes out my arm. And if I'm successful, I've managed to capture a sense of energy and a sense of attitude. That is the thing that makes something fashion. It's what makes something contemporary. It's what makes something now. And the thing is that I don't think this is something that is widely understood, even among other photographers and illustrators. I think there's a very particular subset of us that are basically, we are, what would the word be? Energy junkies.
It also sounds a little bit like dance. I mean, it feels like you're dancing with your medium. You respond, you react.
It is so much like dance. And as I get further and further into this, and I'm finding that, I'm not necessarily seeing the recognition or the access that is required for me to do what I need to do in the fashion industry, I'm really finding myself drawn towards music more and more.
Interesting. Yeah.
The first show that I went to this Fashion Week, Nicholas K., they had a live cellist there named Jeffrey Ziegler. I made sure that I sat right beside Jeffrey Ziegler. And this was the perfect opportunity for an energy junkie because we were able to create a loop. He was shaking out his bow, I was shaking out my brush, we were looking at each other. It was the first show of the week and we were like, let's do this. This is happening now. And it was like fire. Like the sketches that I got at that show were, I never do sketches that good at the first show. And I knew it was because I was right beside someone who was just as engrossed in the art of the moment as I was.
That's fascinating. And now you sketch both, I would call it analog, but you also sketch digitally.
Yes.
I've seen both of these and they're equally impressive and incredible.
Thank you.
What is in terms of your relationship to a material, how much does that affect what you're making?
Yeah, I'm agnostic. I don't think that analog, there's certain things that are delightful about analog. I would say the best thing about analog is that you can never go back. Every line is a commitment.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important. What I love about working with the iPad Pro and programs like Paper by 53 is I am getting in on the ground floor of this, what is next. This is something This is a medium that is really still in its infancy. We are just starting something. And I love to be at the edge of something. I love to be at the ending of something and the starting of something. That is exactly where I belong. So that's the reason why I love working with touchscreen illustration. I know it's the future. It has a long way to go. And it's really great to participate in that. We have I was at a music festival this summer, and it was called the Elements Festival. They had 4 stages to represent each of the elements, like air, fire, water, earth, obviously. And then there's the 5th stage. And the 5th stage didn't come to light until it went dark, and then it lit up. And it was so clear that the 5th element is electricity. This is what's going on now. And I feel myself drawn to that energy. The electricity is coming through the music, and it's coming through the artwork. It's coming through everything that we're doing right now. There's something that is really sacred about it.
Have you used devices like Tilt Brush, where you're starting to be able to draw in
I have
space?
begged people who have access to Tilt Brush to let me get at it, and so far I've not chipped through.
Is that a future? I mean, everything you're talking about is also still illustration on a flat plane, on a two-dimensional plane.
Yeah.
What about this movement in the future towards multiple planes, multiple dimensions?
It's so important. It's so important. I can't wait to get at Tilt Brush, and Tilt Brush, again, is just the start of something. This is just something that's getting started. But the idea that we're entering, I think what the defining aesthetic of this century is going to be is hyperreality. That's where the distinctions, meaningful distinctions between what is digital and what is quote unquote real become just irrelevant.
Yeah. So I have a proposal, because I'm curious if you can draw us a little demo of something here live.
Yeah, certainly. I can show you the kit. I'll have to put down my microphone.
Yeah, I'll hold the microphone and be sound. Could you, I think this would be interesting, could you draw a wrap, a sandwich wrap? A cape wrap?
I could try to draw a sandwich wrap. I am really hungry right now, so I think that would probably be, I think that somewhere inside of me is a strong desire for some kind of sandwich.
in our digital physical divide. We'll
yeah,
see it.
okay, but I'm going to do this with watercolor because this is the kit I have next to me.
Okay.
This is my kit.
You can be heard very well. We have double amplification.
Great. Okay.
So you walk around with this daily?
Yeah, when I go to New York, this is what I carry around with me because New York is all about the hustle. You basically are a walking billboard for yourself. That's why we come here. And then this is my little package that I have stuff in it. Just a little watercolor kit. What else do we have here? Gotta make sure, choose a brush that works. Okay, so then I use these little water brushes. They have water in the handle. They allow us to be pretty mobile. So if it's a wrap sandwich, then it's usually something like that, right? It's like some sort of bread that is wrapped around some stuff.
And as you're going through these gestures and motions, what do you think about?
I try to think as little as possible.
Interesting. If only I could sing, and then I can sing, and it's maybe not a pretty picture, but I could add some rap energy to you.
Yeah. So these are like little rose petals. So I'm wearing a rose shirt today. I kind of feel like I am physically made of love. I can't really like contain sort of the fullness of my feeling in words exactly, but that's the closest I can get.
So this is a wrap that overfloweth.
Yeah, definitely. So there's got to be a lot of affection in there. Affection for New York. I'm leaving New York in 2 days, so everything I see, I love you. I love this. I'm gonna miss that. Everything. So I put some sort of like leafiness into the wrap, like that. So basically this wrap is just full of leaves and flowers.
I think it's the best kind of...
And then it's got to have like, if it's going to be ideal, right? If this is what we're really talking about here, like it's got to be like, there's really got to be a bloody center because, yeah.
Because this wrap is bleeding from the inside out. It doesn't want to leave.
I mean, first of all, I love bloody red meat. That is one of my favorite things to eat. But also, I'm a very sincere person. And I've noticed there's kind of two people in New York. There's people who have a lot of skin, but you can't tell if they have a lot of heart. And then there's people who have a lot of heart. They seem to have no skin at all. And I definitely fall into the latter category.
And thus our wrap. Beautiful. Can you tilt it up so we can see it?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. The official wrap of wraps.
I guess it goes that way.
Wow. Danielle, thank you so much.
Thank you so
stunning
much.
Dialogue. Yeah. May there be, what does the next steps for you look like?
So I am returning to Toronto. This is my spiritual home, and my family, they obviously still live in rural Ontario, so it's the closest I can get to them while still inhabiting a city, because I need to be in a city.
Yeah.
I have to spend a few months there working and preparing for the next leg of my journey. I will continue to go on tour. I will continue to be location independent. I have a lot of adventures to go down, and I have a feeling, or maybe it's just madness, but I have a feeling that my 20th season, that perhaps all of the chipping, maybe I will start to crack through just a little.
It is the forever long journey. As Martha Graham said, our queer divine dissatisfaction. Thank you so much. And for everyone who's watching, Wrap is here every Tuesdays and Thursdays from September 8th to October 27th.